Okay. Hi. Oh my goodness, this desk behind me is such a mess. Pretend that's not there, I guess. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, I first things first am going to link, there we go, my video. Gonna get my link for it, share that to Instagram. Whoops. Not that. Aha. There we go. That's what I want to do. And then we'll be good to go. Oops, that's not what I want. That's what I want. We'll just do that. We're actually a little bit early, just by a minute, but we're a little bit early also. Holy moly, this did not take me this much time last time. All right. Whew. Okay. So, hi, I'm Amy Prokopis. I'm an avid reader. I'm a writer. I am a school counselor and a runner, and I am the author of the book The Arena, which will be coming out very soon. And that's exactly where I want to start is with my updates. So if you follow me on Instagram, I've posted that there's been kind of a miscommunication, an issue with my last cover designer. So that is changing, which means that a few other things need to change as well. So the long story is real complicated, but just to be real brief and get into it, my first cover designer, the one who designed all the covers that you've probably seen online on my website and Instagram, that cover designer unfortunately was not able to finish the project. So he has backed out before he could finish and give me the documents. So all I have are those pictures that I've posted and put places for you guys to see. I don't have the actual cover to put with the book. So uh, yesterday, I got it finalized to work with another cover designer. She has put out a bunch of different or helped with a bunch of different books, both that have been traditionally published as well as self-published, and all of it's young adult, which is what this book is categorized as. So she's got a lot of experience, and I'm super excited to be working with her. And just so she has the time to do everything exactly the way that we would like to, make sure she could get a really good product at the end. I'm going to push back the publication date for the arena. So the arena will be published March 28th of this year. So just a couple months to give her enough time to work on a nice cover design. What this will also do is enable me to do a bit more in the realm of like pre-publication events. So I'm hoping that I can actually get a good pre-order up this time around. In that I can do a few other things on here, like I can do a better book unboxing, and I can do another cover reveal. So we're getting to kind of round two. We're getting to do it again. So the book will be published March 28th. One other thing that has changed, not necessarily related to this whole cover debacle, but more preference wise, I have decided not to record the audiobook myself. I started to, and I could have made things work, but I decided that it was a better use of my time to hire a freelancer for that. So not only am I having somebody else record it for me, I'm going through Amazon's company. So unlike the book, the print book and the digital, the ebook, which will be out on a bunch of different places and in libraries. Since I'm going through Amazon for the audiobook, it'll only be available those limits it a little bit. It won't be like you can't go into a bookstore buy a CD necessarily, but I decided because I'm an Audible user and I really like audiobooks and Audible is one of the biggest platforms for that. I decided to go with their business. So the audiobook will be done through them. And because I need the book published first, the audiobook will be the only thing that's not published on March 28th. The audiobook will probably come out a month after. So I think April. As we get closer to that date and I start working with a freelancer, I will have that date for sure. And I will let all of you know. So the updates I have for the arena since all of this has happened. Now we can get into kind of the fun piece. So I set up this live stream not just to update all of you guys with book things, although that needed to happen, but I wanted to celebrate putting out the first chapter for free on my website, and I wanted to do a live reading of that. So I'm going to pull that up. It'll be on my computer. So it's going to look like I'm like staring ahead the whole time. I'm just reading off the computer screen. But if you're like me, I love audiobooks and recorded books. I love that stuff because it's easy to read them while you are doing other things. And I'm a big multitasker. So I'll turn an audiobook on while I'm doing laundry or in the car. I love to listen to audiobooks when I run. That's a big way that I get through a lot of books is just while I'm out training during the week for whatever race or event I'm planning for, I'll put an audiobook on and it passes the time and makes it pretty enjoyable. So if you're like me and that's kind of how you listen to them, this might be a good portion of the video to maybe set your computer aside and do your cleaning or whatever else you might need to do. So I'm going to pull that up. Okay, so probably should get a drink of water before I start like coughing immediately. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to start with chapter 1 of the arena. Here we go. Chapter 1. Red dirt rose into the air and made me cough. The only thing that kept me from stepping off the sidewalk and in front of the flat-top dune rider as it zipped around the corner. It was a rare sight outside of the capital. In the villages this far away, most people walked or rode on the backs of Alderian wolves if they were rich enough. In Aro, we call them dune dogs, and they might as well be legends as often as we see them. I never understood why they need so many soldiers for the ceremony, Jacob said, waving away the cloud. Most of them don't even attend. No one attends. We have so few kids participate in the ceremony that the ones that do might as well travel to Brill to get the device. He was talking about the ceremony for the device. After finishing general education, kids went through the ceremony in which government scientists fitted them with the nationwide device. Years ago, the device used to be handheld. Jacob used to tell me stories when I was little about these small computers that people used to communicate. Now, These devices are no bigger than a silver dollar and are implanted behind the left ear, where they remain until the wearer dies. I guess they think someone might try to steal one, I suggested. It was impossible to steal another person's device, so taking one from the government was the only way to do it. Not that I knew why anyone would want to steal what they got for free at 18. The ceremony was done in waves. I was scheduled for the fifth wave, which would take place today at 9. We had an assembly on the last day of school to tell us what to expect, which only left us with more questions than we had before. We would go into the village community center alone. Jacob would have to wait outside for me like everyone else's family, though he swore to me he wouldn't be there. It was his last form of protesting my decision before his begging failed, or after his begging failed. Oh my goodness. They said we would be led into a holding room where we couldn't speak to one another until it was our turn. Then we would have our devices implanted and we could go on our way, now adults, included in real society where I had a chance at climbing out of this hellhole of a village. You are an adult now, regardless of whatever you choose today. But by the end of the day, Jacob said, leading the way across the dirt street, you will either be my apprentice in the forge to live free of government restraint, or you will open yourself up to a world of President Grace's propaganda and control. We stopped at the end of the street, moving underneath the tent of a fruit salesman to make way for a family of 5 passing by. Jacob had always been a little paranoid about all the wrong things. He worried more about what the government was doing and how many Alderians snuck into the city to attack it than he did the muggers and murderers that hung around our own street. You've always taught me to reach high, achieve more for myself, so I don't have to live this way. I know I told you at graduation, but I hope you really do understand that I am beyond grateful for everything you've done for me since my birth mom left. To reach higher, though, the device is a requirement. Don't take this the wrong way. Hopefully I'll do better than a blacksmith's apprenticeship, I joked, flicking his leather apron. Jacob smiled, flashing me the silver tooth he made himself in his forge. Hopefully you'll get approved for an academy apprenticeship, he said, squeezing my shoulder and patting the side of my face like he usually did before taking a swing. I took a step back, and his left arm went whooshing past me. We both froze for a moment before breaking into laughter like we usually did between sparring sessions. He pulled me into a hug that lasted much longer than I had expected, and a single tear slipped from his eye when he pulled away, his expression etched with concern. I'm not even sure I want an academy apprenticeship, I said. It meant I had to go to more school while most of my class would already be earning money. I had been saving everything I could, so poor Jacob didn't have to worry about how we'd eat next month. He did well enough as a blacksmith. He was the only one in our region to have a weapons deal with the government. He forged a certain number of weapons a month and shipped them to the capital to be used for the army, but they didn't pay a small house to afford the small house, bills, and food. I knew I'd never be able to attend an academy apprenticeship without his money, and with the cost of tuition alone, I didn't even know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. It seemed stupid to even take the offer if my tests were high enough to get approved. In another month, I would have enough money to get started on my own anyway. Wanted to give you something, Jacob said in my ear, or rather, return it to you. I gasped when I felt something cool slide over the back of my neck. I pulled away just as he clasped the chain and let the pendant fall against my chest. I caught sight of the small blue stone, my heart nearly stopping dead. Jacob, I hissed, closing my fist around the pendant and quickly tucking the entire necklace underneath the collar of my shirt. You know what it is then? He asked in relief. It was wrapped around your tiny ankle when I found you in the forge. That will be 18 years ago come Tuesday. Yes, I know, I told him, leading him away from the fruit stand now that the owner had noticed us loitering. Edith stones were a precious commodity in Galaterra. The entire planet of Alderia, really. They were the whole reason for the war between us and the natives. So owning even the dust of a stone made you practically a millionaire. I kept it a secret until you were ready for it. It's yours. Maybe one day you'll find someone who can explain why the natives can make Eda stones glow, he said. 18 years ago, a woman came into the forge on a night Jacob was working late. She was injured in the middle of labor. If she had gifted the stone to him, she must have been from an important family. Jacob didn't get a chance to ask her any more because he locked her in the back room of the forge while he went for help, and when he returned, I was the only one left. The name Kenna was drawn into the dirt floor at my feet, along with the message to keep me safe, and Jacob had ever since. You shouldn't have put it on me like that, I told him, making sure the chain wasn't peeking out from my shirt. It belonged to your mother. You should be the one to have it, he said. You could sell it and have enough to support yourself for your entire life. No government device needed. No, I meant you shouldn't have given it to me here, I said. You couldn't have done that this morning over breakfast? He laughed and led the way down the alley to the back entrance of the forge. He unlocked the door and went inside, but I stayed in the doorway. He pulled aside the iron doors on the front of the building and waved at the grocer across the street before turning to look back at me. What's wrong? You don't want to practice? He asked, picking up one of the newly forged swords and tossing it to me. I quickly stepped forward and caught it by the hilt to keep it from clattering to the floor. Jacob had picked up a second and turned to face off with me, our swords meeting with the metallic clang. I moved to the side and let his blade slide off mine and nick the floor, forcing him to stumble forwards. I moved out of range so he couldn't charge again and sat the sword back on the rack near the front of the forge. I wanted to do a few things before the ceremony, I told him. I want to clear my head. I wasn't nervous at all, but I made sure to pause before adding the last bit to make it seem like I was. Jacob's expression faltered a little, but he nodded and lowered his sword. I'm behind on fitting the handles on a few guns anyway, he said. He joined me at the front of the shop, letting the sword rest at his side like a cane. I have to say, though, you normally like a good fight before big events like this. It's not like you to just take a walk to clear your head. It'll all be fine, I promise you, whatever you decide. I nodded, keeping up the charade. I knew that there was nothing to fear from the ceremony. Rumors around school were that getting the device put in hurt like crazy, but they assured us in the assembly that it was painless and simple. It was like tucking a piece of hair behind your ear, according to the presenter. I know, I said. I just wanted some time to think about it is all. I'll see you outside the community center when it's all done. Jacob smiled and bent down to kiss the top of my head. I started braiding my hair as I walked further down the street. Jacob didn't like when I wore my hair pulled up this way because it made me look older. This was exactly why I always wore it like this when I went pickpocketing at the bar on the east side of the village. It was an open air. It was always packed. Always had drunk people to steal from, and usually these were capital soldiers or other undesirables that I didn't feel guilty for tricking afterwards. Those men always let me approach, not because I was a girl that looked young but not too young, but because my hair was such a rare shade of red that they always wanted to have a closer look to see if it was real or not. The bar was filled exclusively with soldiers today, most of them men. Usually, I would abandon the hunt if there were too many soldiers, but my talk with Jacob about the future was too fresh in my mind not to take any opportunities. After pausing a moment across the courtyard to plan, I started towards the largest group, packed around a table. I slipped my backpack onto my right shoulder as I got closer and pretended to fumble with the zipper and then my wallet. Just as I was about to chance a move, they all burst into laughter. Thankfully, their exaggerated movements only made things easier. Sorry, sweetheart, the large man said as he leaned back into me, letting his hand linger a little too long on my left arm. I had already tugged the first thing my hand found from his pocket when he leaned into me. "It's okay," I told him, ready to pull away when he did it, making it impossible to slip the hard object I'd grabbed into my backpack. "You work here, sweetheart?" he asked, a few of the other men chuckling. I shifted when I felt his hand press against my hip, giving me a better look at his face. He had shaggy, dark hair and stubble on his jaw, making him the most unkempt soldier I'd ever seen. They usually had their hair cut short, even the women, and were well shaved and groomed. This man was sloppy in comparison. His breastplate was gold, unlike the other men who wore silver, and it was unclasped at the sides so that he could sit with his feet propped up on the table. "I was just on my way to punch in," I said. "I'll take those." I didn't care if it was obvious at this point. I tucked the object into my pocket and quickly gathered the empty glass bottles in my hands. The man laughed as I walked away. I only noticed now that there wasn't a trash can in the courtyard, meaning I'd have to put the bottles on the bar. The owner figured out what I was up to, or at least that I was up to no good, a week ago. I turned to face the closest table when the burly man appeared behind the bar, but it was too late. "Girl," he called out. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I dropped the bottles on the table, a couple rolling off and smashing against the floor. I took off down the road, ducking into the first alley I found and coming out the other side. I slowed my pace to keep from drawing attention, continuing another block before I was sure no one was following me. I started towards the community center early. The building was the largest in our village. It was a dome-shaped copper building set atop two flights of stairs on all sides. It took me 5 minutes longer than I had planned to reach it, causing me to rush up the steps and through the automatic doors with just a few minutes to spare before the start of my wave. The hairs on my arms and legs all stood straight up as soon as the cold air hit me. The long hallways stretched from one side of the building to the other, the only light coming from the glass sliver that was the ceiling nearly 20 floors above us. There were 12 of us in my wave, my 11 classmates sitting in chairs placed along one wall. 2 soldiers were positioned in the hall, one just feet from me and the other near the other exit. "Please sit," the soldier near me said. I took the last empty chair, which was 6 feet away from Jameson Roberts on my left. He didn't smile when he noticed me, the nerves clear on his face. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the hall too quiet for being one of the largest employers in the entire village. At last, a pleasant ding sounded from an unseen intercom. The soldier to my right pulled me to my feet by my right bicep. "Where are we going?" I asked, barely getting time to loop my backpack around my wrist before a panel on the wall slid away to reveal a small room. The soldier guided me into the dark space before backing into the hall again so the panel could slide shut and leave me in the silence. Another ding sounded, and the room filled with light, making me groan as my eyes adjusted. "Please remove all your clothes and place them in the receptacle. Shut the receptacle when you finish," a woman's voice said. I looked around the room for the voice, but I was alone. The room was too small for more than one person anyway. There was a click, and a rectangular bin slid out from the wall behind me. I paused just a moment to calm my nerves before stripping. I froze when the last thing I had on was the Edith stone Jacob had given me. Was it safer to put the glowing stone in my backpack or wear it? Would they go through my things? I tucked my new necklace into the pocket of my pants when I felt the cool steel of the stolen object there. I pulled it out, a gold cylinder that looked like a tube of lipstick. Almost. There was a small switch near the bottom. I pressed down on it and gasped. A small dagger shot out the top, tapered to a deathly tip. I tested my index finger at the very tip and was surprised when a bead of red blossomed on my skin. I didn't feel the sting until I wiped away the blood. I tucked my new necklace into the pocket of my pants and then, sorry. I tucked my new necklace into the pocket of my pants with the knife and shut the bin. As soon as I did, another one slid from the wall. This one had what looked like a pair of blue scrubs inside and a shower cap. I was already sliding my legs into the pants as the woman's voice began instructing me to dress. I shut the bin after tucking my hair inside the cap, and another panel opened to my left. "Step out, please," the woman said. I followed the masked woman into a small operating room. A giant halo light turned on above us. She led me to a reclining chair where she began prepping a metal trolley with utensils as I sat. I wanted to ask what she was going to do, but her hands moved so fast from one thing to the next that I knew she wouldn't answer me. "Keep your head against the headrest, please," she said. I felt my heart skip as the chair began to recline. I took a deep breath and tried letting my body relax against the cushions. The woman adjusted a pair of glasses on her face before taking a silver instrument from the trolley. I didn't get a chance to look before she pressed her gloved hand to my temple, so I was now looking at the blank wall. A strange feeling swept over the skin behind my ear, just like the presenter at school said. The feel of the cool gel made me shiver. Then I heard a loud crunch. 4 holes punched into my skull and I saw stars. I felt like I was floating somewhere above the action. It hadn't hurt, but the feeling of being so out of control sent my heart racing in panic. "Stay seated, please," the woman said, and took a step back. I heard a panel open behind me, and then I was moving. I could tell only because the chair began to vibrate underneath me. Through my hazy vision, I could see the stark white ceiling change to dark wood. After nearly a minute, my vision went back to normal and could take in more of the room. There were 12 soldiers in the large hall, one for each of us. They stood before a raised platform where 4 government officials sat staring at us. My classmates were lying in chairs to my left, all looking around the room with apprehension. Jameson caught my gaze and opened his mouth to speak, but one of the officials at the table spoke first. "When you feel able to, stand up and move to the right of your chairs," she said. None of us hesitated. The chairs slid along the floor behind us. "The guards will now activate your devices," she said. The soldiers started forward. Mine raised a small silver rod as he approached. I forced myself to stand still, despite something nagging me to raise my hand in defense as he pressed the end of the rod to my new device. 12 beeps sounded out, and then the guards went back to their posts. "Your devices are now active. You can use it by pressing the button just behind your ear and then use your thoughts to send calls and messages. You will receive a letter in the mail with the results of your final exams. If you have been accepted to the academy, you will then be allowed to tour and select your apprenticeship and begin your next stage of education. If you haven't been accepted, your letter will also have your work card, so you may now begin earning your living," the woman said. The room went strangely quiet, and then all 11 of my classmates said yes in unison. The room was quiet again, so much so that I was sure the panel of officials could hear my heart beating. A man at the table leaned to the woman, and soon the 4 were bent together in discussion. I looked to my classmates for an explanation. Was my device not working right? Was I supposed to say something? "The guards will now escort you back to the hallway where you can join your loved ones," the woman said. The soldiers moved forward, taking their places behind us as the woman pressed a finger to the device behind her ear. I expected someone to say something, or for the guards to lead the way out, but the room was quiet. All 12 of us exchanged confused glances, a few looking to the soldiers behind them who remained stoic. Jameson looked up at me before his body went limp. All 11 crumpled, caught easily by the soldiers behind them. Before I could question what had happened, both of my arms were seized and held tightly behind me. "What did you do to them?" I asked. The doctor who had installed my device appeared next to me, pushing my hair aside and inspecting the area. I tried to pull away from the guard, but he held on too tight. "It's active, Lieutenant," the doctor called out. "There's nothing wrong." "But there is," the woman said, standing up from the table. "She's Alderian, a spy. She's a traitor to Galaterra. Take her to the ship." I'm not a spy, I said. I've lived here my whole life. The woman didn't say anything else. The guard began dragging me past my classmates, some of them stirring as a panel opened that led back to the hall. Help me with the girl, the soldier holding me said. One of the soldiers from the hall came forward and grabbed my right arm. Before he could get a good grip, I wrenched free and ran for the exit. The doors opened before me, and the small crowd waiting to receive us began cheering. Jacob, I yelled as loud as I could. The crowd quieted, all aside for Jacob, who began pushing his way through the people. I started down the first flight of stairs, feeling something wrap around my ankles. They both snapped together, and I collapsed hard on the landing. Kenna, Jacob said, appearing at the bottom of the last flight. Soldiers along the street began running towards the crowd, the people all looking around us in horror. They're both terrorists to Galaterra, a soldier said, as two men grabbed my arms and hauled me to my feet. I'm not a spy, I said. Kenna, Jacob said. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, a sheathed dagger coming out from underneath his blacksmith's apron and a small throwing knife raised in his right hand. The crowd was deafening when the knife sunk into the soldier holding my right arm, the wet thunk as the blade lodged into his throat, nearly paralyzing me. The other soldier let go of me in shock. Jacob tossed the dagger at me, and I caught it by the sheath with no idea what I should do next. Grab him, a new voice said, this one deep and guttural. It cut through the screaming of the onlookers in such a clear way that it made me pause and look. The man I had pickpocketed stood on a flat-top dune rider, himself guarded by two soldiers. The remaining soldiers escorting me grabbed my sheath. I didn't think, I acted. I wrenched the dagger free and drove it into his gut before he could get his stunning rod more than halfway from its holster. I crumpled with him, remembering now that I was still bound by my ankles. With my hand gripping the hilt of the dagger almost to the point of pain, I tugged it from the soldier's stomach and flipped to my back to free my feet. The blade of the dagger made an ugly squeal against the metal device wrapped around my ankles, sliding off and nicking the top of my bare feet enough to spill blood on the stone beneath me. Girl, the man in the gilded armor said. I glanced up at him while trying to tug free, my hands freezing when I saw him. Two guards had Jacob between them. The gold soldier pushed a button on his wrist and then pressed the metal glove to Jacob's forehead. He let out a terrible scream, the sound so terrifying that I held onto the dagger tighter and held it towards the two soldiers who had approached to arrest me. Stop it, I told the gold soldier. He smiled and lowered his hand. This time he drew a sword from his hip. He nodded for both soldiers to move aside. He took Jacob roughly by the hair and held the blade to his neck. Drop the dagger, or I cut him to the bone, he said. The way he said it, with such hope, made my body feel light with adrenaline. Instead of stealing from him, I imagined that I had gutted him when he snaked his arm around. The approaching soldiers tugged me to my feet again, practically lifting me onto my toes. The gold soldier lowered his sword and stepped away from Jacob. Before he could take a step, the scarlet tip of the sword burst through his chest. My throat ached from my scream, though I didn't hear the sound. The soldiers held me tight, preventing me from running to Jacob's limp body. Take her to the ship, the gold soldier said. My feet barely skidded each stair on the way down. I spat towards the large man once I was close enough, but he wasn't at all bothered by the saliva clinging to his cheek. Wait, he said, raising the sword to my neck before the soldiers could drag me past him. Warm drops fell against my skin and slid under the collar of my scrubs. You swore you wouldn't, I said, my voice hoarse. The man smiled. I told you I wouldn't cut him to the bone, he said, turning the sword and cleaning the blood off both sides using my chest. I went through the bones first. He started towards the flat-top dune rider. The soldiers led me away from the crowd and towards a line of dune riders along the street. One of the soldiers removed a small metal bar from his waist. He pressed a finger to the black line around the center and then tapped it to my wrists. It snapped tightly around them like a bracelet. "Get in," he said, opening the back door of the walls, just a bench on each side. I had to sit on in place by a magnetic force. The door slammed. Oh, I lost my place. Oh my goodness. The door slammed shut, and I was plunged into total darkness with nothing but the memory of Jacob's pained expression and the smell of blood to accompany me. That's the end of chapter 1. So, thank you for watching this video and coming along with me on this journey as I try to publish this book. Again, the new publication date for the arena is March 28th. I will post updates as we go, including what the new cover looks like and other fun things along the way. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, that's where I'm most active. My username there is Amy Procopus. Same thing here on YouTube. So subscribe if you want to get all of the notifications when I post new videos. And you can read more about the arena and my writing process on my website, amyprocopus.com. And follow my Goodreads if you're interested in the books I'm reading throughout this month. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. Bye.